Hello, the internet. Welcome to round one, the top half of the West Division. In the last video, we saw some interesting action. Are we going to get some interesting action here? Most definitely. We've got 8 more games to cover. The games on the top are the favorites. The games below are the underdogs. The winners of this will be what matches up next round, and the winner of these will match up the second round. So we're going to start off over here with our 1 seed, Naruto. My favorite deck builder game. We really like this one. This one has the potential to go very far. Versus another deck builder game. We have a lot of deck builder games. Star Trek, which is our 2 Star Treks. You can see we have 2 of them here. I just randomly put them in the same division. This one is our less favorite. I think this one was made first, and then this one was made second. And it shows because the rule book for this one is kind of vague, where it's more specific for this one. And a few things of this one are like, why is the game set this way, that this one kind of fixes? So this one was a blowout. What does that mean? In this game, this year, we're rolling 6-sided dice, and we add up half the value of the 6-sided die. So any game where the win is by 2.5 points or more, since the tiebreaker is the pre-die roll score, even if you rolled a 6 and the other one rolled a 1, that would be a tie then, and then so that the game with the higher value is the winner. So in this case, we have a blowout because Naruto scored an 18. And Star Trek, the deck building game, scored a 14.5. So that is more than 2.5 points. In addition, for the first round, there's a chance for games from the play-ins to steal a spot, but only if the game scores less than an 18.5. Now, since the minimum die roll is a 1, 18 plus a half would give you 18.5. That means that Naruto automatically moves on, and no dice will be rolled for this particular matchup. So that's pretty typical for the 1 seeds versus the 16 seeds. 14.5. This year was good enough to get in the tournament. Next year, it'll probably require a 15. So Star Trek, the next generation deck building, he will probably be sent down to the playing games for the 2025-26 season. So, but always a fun game to play once per year. All right, the 8-9. And I warned you, the 8-9s are crazy. We saw it in the North Division where the 8-9 literally came down to the die roll. It's going to do so again, and even more so this time than last time. These are games that are either up and coming or games that just took a small fall last year, but they're good games that could easily come back, and that's exactly what we got for this game. Bellum Magica. Kind of hard to explain. This sort of resource management game. Each round you roll a die is rolled, and for that number you have certain resources you get and certain attack values you get. You're trying to get chests, but you can steal chests. It's kind of an interesting game. Versus Axes and Allies. This is the reprint version. I actually like the reprint version a little bit better than the original Avalon Hill version. It has a couple of new units, a couple new rules. And the distribution of the map's slightly different, and I think it gives the Axes a little bit better of a chance, especially if you're trying to play a quick game, because this has a different conditions in the original game. This one has certain key cities that if you control a certain number of them, you win. There's 12 key cities, 6 for each side, and in the quick game, you can play till someone gets 8, so they only have to capture 2. For the Axes, 2 of them are right on your border. And so you can actually win in round 1, and I've actually done that before. This round, I was playing the Allies. It took me to the end of round 2 to win because my kid plays kind of defensively. And, well, if you get an experienced strategician, that doesn't work very well. So, but it's a lot of fun. And it scored a lot better than last year. Plus, we like to play this with Zimbabwe currency. So we're using like 10, 100, $200 million Zimbabwe notes. It's a lot of fun. All right, anyhow, the score. Bellum Magica, 17. Which means it'll need a 3 or better to have a chance of making it to the next round. If it rolls a 1 or 2, even if it wins the match, it is out. Axes and Allies, also scored a 17. So it's in the same boat that Bellum Magica is. So we're going to roll 2 dice. The white die is going to be for Axes and Allies because that's what the kind of dice you have for Axes and Allies anyways. The green die is going to be for Bellum Magica. Now, for Axes and Allies, since it is a game where you want to roll low, not high, whatever I roll on the white die, I will flip it. So if I roll a 1, it'll count as a 6. If I roll a 6, it'll count as a 1. All right. And if there's a tie, if we roll the same roll, we will have to do a tiebreaker. All right, here we go. Who is moving on to face Naruto in this second round? It is... So a 4 flips to become a 3. And that gives it a final score of 18.5, which is just enough. So Axes and Allies will be moving on to the next round. Bellum Magica, you fought well. You'll be a good seed next year. Fun game to play. We'll definitely play you again next year. Yeah, these... And Axes and Allies is going up against Naruto. So we have our first upset of the West Division. We had an upset in the West, but it didn't score high enough to move on. But we have our first upset in the West. The 9 beats the 8. We'll face Naruto. Can Axes and Allies knock off Naruto? You never know. Might get the right die roll. If we roll a 1 on Axes and Allies and roll a 1 on Naruto, because 1's counted as 6s for Axes, and we'll do that again, because that's how Axes and Allies is played. It could win. I'm going to make a bold prediction that in the second round, we're going to get at least one 8-9 seed to knock down a 1 seed. It's going to happen. It's going to happen with the die roll. It's going to happen. All right, moving on to the other half of the top half of the West Division. We have the 5 seed Carcassonne versus the 12 seed Star Trek, the original series deck building game. Almost a blowout, but not quite, so a die roll will be required. Carcassonne scored a 17, which means in order to move on to the next round, it will need to roll a 3 or better, and it'll just be a straight die roll, because neither of these is Axes and Allies. Star Trek scored a 15, which means in order to win the match, it would need to roll a 6, and Carcassonne would have to roll a 1. However, with that, an 18 is not enough to move on, so it has no chance of moving on. It does have a small chance of winning this round, but no chance of moving on to the second round. So the real question is, who is going to move on to the second round? Is it going to be Carcassonne, or is it going to be the number 3 team in the play-ins, which is currently Zombie World? So who moves on to the next round? The black die is going to be Star Trek. The white die is going to be Carcassonne. And moving on to the next round is... Ooh. Oh, that makes me a little sad. Carcassonne wins with a 17.5. However, that is not enough for it to move on to the next round. So Carcassonne is out. Star Trek is out. And Zombie World moves in to the next round. Right now, the 5 seed is the best seed to have lost. So right now, as it stands right now, our top game from the play-ins, Burger Joint, if this ends like this and no other teams go, they would take this 5 spot. But we'll see if any higher spots. We may find a 2 spot that goes away. We'll see. So that is that one. All right, our final matchup. Ticket to Ride Old West. Now, you're seeing Ticket to Ride France and going, what the heck? Why did you just say Old West? There's Old West. Most Ticket to Ride expansions have 2 maps. Our rule is for a box with multiple games, we typically only take one of those games. We take the one we like better. We do not like Ticket to Ride France. We played it once. It was weird. So we do really like Ticket to Ride Old West. In fact, my kid likes it so much, we played it twice, which is very rare. We usually play it once and he runs off. So he's like, oh, can we play again? I'm like, sure, we can. So we played it twice. It's a fun game. It's got a very different way to play than a lot of the Ticket to Ride games. So because of that, it doesn't just count as a random expansion. It counts as a separate game. Whereas in Monopoly, all the different games are really the same game with just different names. Ticket to Ride tends to be very good at making each game different and separate and just not just a new map. So now this one was a blowout. Ticket to Ride scored an 18, so no dice are going to be required here. It moves on to the next round where it will take on whoever comes in from the plans. That'll be decided later. And Spellmaker, it's kind of hard to explain. This is a really old game. This game's almost as old as me, and I'm kind of old. From 1978. It's kind of an area control kind of game where there's a princess in the middle of the board, and you're trying to get her to your castle by moving your guys onto that space and either using movement or spells to move them back. And you can create and destroy using spells. It's kind of an interesting game. My kid didn't do any spells, and so the game was very short, and I won. We gave this one a 14.5. So it did not win, and it'll probably be pushed down to the play-ins, which I'll be honest is probably where this one really belongs. It's an okay game. It's a fun game to pull out once, and it was really quick. But it's not the game where if it's sitting on your shelf and you don't have a tournament like this, it's gonna sit on your shelf. You're never gonna play it. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you play it, you'll enjoy it. But if you're picking out games, they're much better. There's better ones out there. So, but we'll keep it. We'll play it in the play-ins next year. All right. So that is the recap. Naruto is going to face Axis and Allies next round, and Ticket to Ride Old West will face someone out of the play-ins. We now have 3 from the play-ins into the tournament. From this half of the division, we have 2 that are going to be sent back down. I think we had 4 from the north, so now we have 6 that are going to be relegated to the play-ins next round and will be replaced by games that did better. Because I think we had 16 games in the play-ins that scored a 15.5 or better before the die roll. So unless that number of games that goes below 15 exceeds that, then the 15s it'll take a 15. All right, so until the next video, which will be the bottom half of the play-ins, which will include one of my favorites, Castles of Burgundy. I'll see you next time.